The broadcast is live.
And I just realized I didn't think of anything witty to open up with, so we've been spared, I guess.
How is that any different?
I've seen your jokes in Messenger, sir. I'm just saying.
Those are jokes?
I wasn't talking about the Giants, so. Oh.
So,
well, I don't have any room to talk.
Yeah.
Well, the big news we can break here is the hot speculation book right now that we all looked at today. And I should have dug it out, but the first there was Squirrel Girl, and now we have Arms Fall Off Man from the Suicide Squad 2 movie.
Who created Arms Fall Off Man?
Yeah, probably Grant Morrison, because I had the Secret Origins number 45, 46, 44, whatever it is, right, that he's in, but it's hot on eBay right now.
I've been looking for Polka Dot Man's first appearance, and I can't find it.
What's funny is I sort of remember Polka Dot Man, but we're talking like when I was 10, and that can't be right. That can't be. I'm probably thinking Crazy Quilt or something, but yeah. But I watched the Suicide Squad 2 trailer halfway through, and the thing looks like it's going to be as fun as Guardians of the Galaxy. But all the posters, they have movie posters, and they have each character. They all get their own movie poster, and every one of them says, "Don't get attached." So, I think there's going to be bloodshed of these delisted villains,
I just watched the trailers.
Yeah.
Not the movies. I like that first Suicide Squad trailer. Never watched the movie. Never going to watch the movie. Probably I'm not going to watch this Suicide Squad movie, but I liked the trailer. That's why I'm a trailer fan these days. That's my attention span.
The first Suicide Squad movie, everything that happened in it felt like it should have been the first 30 minutes, not the entire movie.
Just watch the trailer. That's all you need.
That's like the exact opposite of Peter Jackson's King Kong movie. You could have just got rid of the first 30 minutes. Wouldn't have missed much.
Yep.
Oh, I thought Peter Jackson's King Kong movie was like fantastic. Just
no, it is.
Just get to Skull Island.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that movie. If we just skip the first hour, great movie.
But enough about these movies and trailers. Let's talk some comics. I did a video of my miscellaneous magazine section.
Oh, nice.
And this is one that I found some interesting stuff in there that I forgot existed.
Yeah.
This is a George Perez black and white magazine.
I've seen those images, but I didn't know that's what it was in.
It's from 1986, but it's a reprint from 1978 of Topaz, and it's created and written by Dave Lillard, whoever that is.
Yeah.
And it's illustrated by George Perez and Michael Higgins. And it's interesting because Michael Higgins in the 80s, I knew him in the 90s as a letterer, but he also was an editor in Marvel Comics in the 80s. And he even wrote some stuff. Like he wrote Power Pack. I remember he turned one of the kids into a horse.
One of the alien little white ponies, if you will. I remember that. I didn't know he was the guy that did it, but I remember that.
Yeah, he wrote that, Michael Higgins. But this really surprised me that I had, because I made a video this weekend because I have one section of my collection called miscellaneous magazines, and I don't even think I've looked through it in at least a decade. So I was like, you know what? I want to look through it and see what's in there. So I made a video of me looking through it. And this was one of them. I was like, wow, who knew I had a George Perez black and white magazine?
Here's what kills me with the hobby. As much as I talk about it, I've seen those images before. I may very well have them somewhere. It's not in that. I don't know what I've seen them in. But I'm also sitting here like June Brigham drew that Power Pack where one of the kids got turned into the alien horse. You know what I mean? I'm like, that I can remember. Great.
Wow.
All right, we got... Go ahead.
And I can remember having a conversation with Higgins once where he was telling me, and the reason he turned him into the horse was because he always heard that writers should write what they know, but he decided he wanted to write what he didn't know. So he wrote about a kid turning into a horse.
Nice. That's awesome.
That makes total sense.
I don't know how he reached that conclusion.
All right. So we have Scott, we have Paolo, we have Jared, and we got a guest tonight. Now that some people are here, we got the Simply Incredible podcast joining us. The third time was the charm, and this has been planned for a year.
Yep.
And he finally made it. So welcome. And he claimed he was going to hide in a corner, so we can't, that's not going to work here.
Well, according to the comment section, we have the same voice, so I can be quiet and no one will know the difference.
He's more Central Virginia Hick. I'm more Southwestern Hick. All right.
And there is a difference because I live in adjacent to both those areas. So.
Yes. You can hear his subtleties.
I just started looking in the back because I thought it was comic book. These old ones have like comic book price guides and stuff in them where you can buy comic books. But it looks like it's game modules.
Yeah.
Star Trek Golden Trivia Game. Project Wide Awake, the X-Men. There was a game module for something called Project Wide Awake that did the X-Men. I have no idea. Starfleet Rules Update number 1.
I know exactly what that is.
There's like a few hundred game modules here. I don't know that much about gaming. Marvel Superheroes Set 1. I think I remember that.
Yeah, there was a Marvel Superheroes role-playing game back then.
Yeah, and I sold the basic set probably like 5 or 6, probably like in 2014, because I wanted to get the expert set, and they weren't that expensive. Now they're super expensive to get those 80s role-playing games.
Especially anything that was produced by TSR back then.
Yeah.
There are people that collect that stuff just as hardcore as any comics collectors.
Oh, yeah, and it's also got miniatures in here, too. Law Officers and Canines, Chaos Dragon, Shire Dragon, Swamp Dragon, Wind Dragon. Yeah, I've never seen that. I've never seen like gaming stuff for sale. It's almost always comic books in these old things for sale.
Right.
I've never seen one with gaming modules and miniatures. Yeah. Whoever this was must have been hooked up with them somehow.
Possibly.
I bet it was like 86 and 87. I used to see a lot of those in some magazines I would get.
Yeah, this is 86, so it's right around that time period.
Yeah. Also, seems like I remember an issue of Oracle that had a Frank Bruner cover.
So, I tried to
also, one of the things I also noticed is in the 80s, it must have been because of the success of Love and Rockets. There were a lot of indie magazines, comic magazines, but they just don't exist anymore. I
didn't see those until probably like 89 and after, like in back issue bins or whatever they had on the shelves. When I saw that those existed, I was like, you talk about feeling like you missed out, Yeah.
Because like, Peter Baggs, Neat Stuff. He started out in a magazine. What's his name? Dan Clowes, 8 Ball. He started out with Lloyd Llewellyn. That was a magazine size. But I guess it was right around 1990. They all relaunched kind of as comics with their new projects. So I wonder, in a bunch of the magazines I had in that section were, Fantagraphics magazines. So I guess it was all copying Love and Rockets. I guess Love and Rockets made the format successful for a brief little time. Because I can't remember many magazines from the 90s.
Yeah, that was around the time that the second indie boom started, right?
Yeah.
Because the first one was the Turtles.
Right.
And around the 90s, that's when Malibu started having, not Malibu, the companies that preceded Malibu, like Adventure Comics and Eternity Comics and that stuff with Canadian elves. That
oh my gosh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. I think Tundra popped up or had already been around. Eclipse.
Elf Lord.
Star.
Eclipse was about to go. No, not about to go under because they still had Miracle Man, but
they peaked and were on their way down, basically.
Yeah, first was about to go down.
Eclipse started with a magazine too. They had Eclipse Monthly.
Yeah,
But
I think
was in the 70s,
that was among
right?
the earliest ones.
Yeah, Eclipse kind of started in the 70s, I think. But I read an editorial by the guy that owned the Eclipse, and you would have thought like he revolutionized comics when he was talking about all the things that had been there first and who he had brought up. You know, and I was reading this editorial, and even then I was just sort of like, what? I think it was in the Total Eclipse where he got Marv Wolfman or somebody to do their version of Crisis. And Marv Wolfman actually told me at a comic book convention that none of those characters should have been together. That was a mistake, but he was doing it as a favor for a friend. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking about the guy's editorial about how Eclipse does not, it's like the, I don't know, the unappreciated real revolutionary of comics, the way he was reading.
I'm kind of surprised that the indie guys didn't band together around Sleek magazine. Because in the 70s, in the 60s and 70s, the indies all produced all that mimeographed stuff. The best you could come up with in terms of paper printing quality was stuff that Last Guest was doing, and maybe when his kitchen got involved, that's when they started going up in quality. But with the success of Heavy Metal and then Epic Illustrated, I'm surprised that there weren't more creators banding together and doing something that looked sleek, but that had real indie stuff and not geared toward the mainstream market.
It's just so hard to band together.
Yeah, one of the things that both Last Gasp and Ripoff Press had in common was the vast majority of the creators that they published work by were all living in the Bay Area in California.
Yeah.
So they were geographically, not far from each other.
It's really hard to band together.
Because we had some magazines of that type in Europe. So there was what was the one where the Rank Xerox was published in Italy? Cannibal in Italy, El Víbora in Spain, and Bordeaux in France. And they have good quality. They had good quality paper, but they had stuff that by American standards would be considered indie.
Yeah.
Which is funny because Bordeaux is owned by the largest French comic book publisher.
See, I got
they're
to
still
switch
going
my
on.
brain out because I keep getting in the wrong decade as you're talking. In the 80s, I remember it well referred to as alternative comics, and indie didn't become indie comics until the 90s. You know what I mean? It's the same thing, but it's just that label. When I hear indie, I go straight to the 90s in my head.
Yeah, it's rare that you get a label for an era during the era itself.
Mm-hmm.
All about identity and labels. Let's face it.
Yeah. And when we talk about the 60s, we shouldn't use indie. But in conversation, if we call them comics, people can tell that it's supposed to be comics with an X.
In 70s, it was underground. No, the purest form of alternative comics is,
And, probably a lot of people didn't know about any of that stuff till the Underground Price Guide came out.
Oh, I totally agree. I absolutely agree. I don't think everybody was fortunate enough to have a stepdad who was much into the drug marijuana, missed out on the love hippie culture at the time where he knew what a head shop was. And that's where you found that stuff,
Yeah.
The fact that that's how Crumb got big was being printed in head shops blows my mind,
They actually had a good distribution system, a national distribution system.
They were guaranteed return customers in those shops.
Yeah, right. And that's what killed the underground comics was the outlawing of head shops all across the country.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, because like they had those indie those underground comics were selling like 300,000-400,000 over a few printings. They sold a lot of underground. It was not small business. And it went sometime in the mid 70s, states started to outlaw head shops, individual states, one by one. That was the anti-drug movement, and they couldn't, the drugs were already outlawed. So they outlawed head shops.
So let me make sure who we're talking about. What we're talking about. We're talking about Crumb, Von Bode, whoever did the Freak Brothers.
Yeah,
those are the big,
Gilbert Shelton.
Gilbert Shelton.
Yeah, and tons of other anything considered an underground. It was considered underground because you couldn't buy them in regular stores. You could only buy them in head shops.
Yeah.
And that's also why they went to many printings too, because you could sell Zap Comics #1 over and over.
Right.
And then once the new, whoever came into the head shop and wanted some of these cool comics, they didn't care about, the latest issue of Spider-Man.
Right.
They just wanted a cool comic.
I just
to smoke the
realized.
weed with.
I just realized that I was like a barnacle on a whale. I was part of that, and where the Stab Dad went to the head shops. There's another comic book connection in my youth, and I never put that together. Because I read some of that stuff, and it was just like filthy. Like I should have been like hiding underneath the trailer reading that stuff.
That's because you could make it adult because kids weren't going into head shops and buying it. And, your average mom wasn't going into a head shop and buying it and getting all upset by an underground comic. She never saw it.
Unreal. Oh, I'm sitting here thinking about like this one where it was like Dirty French Comics that was like in the house for 7 years. It was like a trade. I don't know where it had to be in a head shop, but that thing was in our house forever. And then one day it just disappeared around 88. Like right. It just. I think the mother found it. I don't know.
But think about how much of an impact head shops had on American comics, because they really made things possible for adult comics. For because while that was going on, we were still very much under the thumb of the comics code.
Right.
And then you got to think about what everyday life was back then and stuff. People would sit in parks, small towns, big towns, sit under a tree and just smoke a joint. And then they would go to a head shop. It wasn't like it was they were the 80s hadn't happened where Nancy Reagan was like, we're going to say no to drugs and wipe them out. This was when people they were just tired and got used to seeing it, So,
this is when you saw the Freedom Rock commercial.
Yes. Turn it up.
Freedom Rock.
Turn it up, man.
In the town that I lived in the late 70s and throughout the 80s and stuff, all you did was just get behind. You would just pull up behind the Pizza Hut, and somebody would come out of the Pizza Hut and sell you a nickel bag, and then you just went on with your day. And I'm like, how's this going on for years? Do you call ahead? What was
You get the stuff.
Oh, I didn't know we were going here. That's funny. Want to see who we have out there today, because we've already been called names.
Oh my God.
John C. He seems to be the man to beat if you want to get here early. He was Mind the Comics. Daryl, we've already talked about VDR here.
Yep.
John C.
Saying hello.
Here we go. Pooh, Tiger, Piglet, and Eeyore, but I'm intimidated by Christopher Robin.
I wonder how
he's very litigious.
I wonder how far in advance that he has different groups of 4 people to compare us to in the future.
I'm impressed that he's yet to even come close to repeat himself. He hasn't even touched the same genre with these names. Matthew Rasco. Got some Hitman and Garth Ennis. Nice.
I don't know, a date with a Garth Ennis fan? That might be a little scary.
I tried to win an auction on eBay for a hardback by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. No idea what it's about, but it's called "All My Heroes Were Junkies" or something.
Oh, that's
lost it by.
That's Criminal. No, that's that. No, pardon me. That's the that's one of their independent graphic novels that didn't appear in Criminal first, but it kind of takes place in the Criminal universe. Yeah. It's good. That one was good.
Lost it by a quarter in the last 5 seconds.
Matter of fact, I think that one, when we were talking about sad comics, I think that one was a bit sad, if I remember correctly. It came out about 2 years ago.
Well, a comic that was created by and rejuvenated by people who know these years we're talking about and stuff. But I hit an Ollie's and I got the last trade of Swamp Thing, Volume 2, the one where Grant Morrison and Mark Miller started the last arc, and Mark Miller took over. And I've made it 3 or 4 pages in, and I've read bits and pieces of this, and it's pretty lackluster. I'm hoping it gets better.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're still taking what Alan Moore has done. And I'm just reading this. I read the synopsis, but basically he's already the Parliament of the Green, so he's got the plant powers. And now there's a Parliament of Rock, a Parliament of Water, a Parliament of Air, and they're giving him all the elemental powers. And he's decided we're not worth a living. You know, we're terrible. And I guess that's people trying to talk him out of it. I don't know.
Is there a Parliament of Funkadelic?
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I'm kind of offended by this. You know, I'm like, there's one Parliament.
We've discussed before how I said Alan Moore ruined Swamp Thing, not because of his stuff was any bad, because everybody just makes the Parliament of everything now. It's like the same thing over and over.
Hold on.
Parliamentary, my dear Watson.
Well, I tell you what, I like some of the stuff that Vetch did, and everybody praises the Nancy Collins stuff, but I can't get into it. But I think I think there's anybody that proves your point of it, it would be this Miller run, I think, so far.
Charles Vest posted the other day that DC had published a Swamp Thing compilation like 3 years ago, and he just now found out about it, and he never even got a comp copy.
Oh,
yeah, that's the way it goes. Yeah, I started reading Swamp Thing off the stands with Alan Moore. I read through the Veach run, and I read a little bit of the Nancy Collins, and then I've never read it since. I just abandoned. I was like, all right, I'm done with Swamp Thing.
My first Swamp Thing was 78 or 79. It was number 2, and it's the one where he actually kind of turned human, and Bernie Wrightson and stuff. And I put together that whoever drew this Swamp Thing book also drew this these circus freaks in a heavy metal story that I had that was beside of it. And Bernie's the one that made me start realizing that people worked at different companies, if that made sense. In my little kid mind, you know, everybody was, this is your house. This is where you work.
Right.
You know, I pictured it like a real job, you know.
Yeah, the first time I got to read Swamp Thing was the relaunch with, who was it, Martin Pascoe, and was it Tom Yates who was drawing it?
It was Yates or a Yeats, I can't remember, but you're probably right. Yeah, poor Martin Pascoe. That's all I got to say.
I only stuck with it about 6 issues or so because it was really kind of dull.
Oh man, you got any? Well, Daryl, you got any Swamp Thing stories?
No. No, because that run with Alan Moore is one I've been trying to build, and I just never can find them. I mean, they're out there, but let me rephrase that. I can't find them for what I want to pay for them.
Right.
I get it.
I imagine that's one of those runs. If you bought it, you're keeping it.
Yeah.
You might as well go with the trades because at least you can put them on a shelf and say, "This is my Swamp Thing collection."
Yeah.
The thing about Swamp Thing is that it's great. You know, it's great to have them like, you know, collectible and nice and stuff. But it's another thing where it's definitely better to read it in my mind than to hoard it up. It's rereadable. I mean, he lucked up. He really lucked up. He's out in the middle of a swamp, so you don't have to worry about it getting dated. The swamp looks like a swamp now, like it did 40 years ago. You know, I'm like, you know,
3 million years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when I read the stuff in the Brazilian comics, it started in the Super Friends magazine. And so you can imagine it was a backup to Warlord and Green Lantern.
Oh, as a backup. See, there's a Super Friends story where there was a party, a Halloween party, and people actually dressed up as, you know, Swamp Thing and some other heroes, and then somebody cast a spell and they thought they really were them. You know, so they count that as a
But there were no Super Friends stories. The title was just called Super Friends. But that's where they put some of the more offbeat. They had canceled one magazine where Atari Force was being published, especially when the New Teen Titans got their own spin-off. So they used Super Friends for the offbeat stuff. That's where they had Warlord, the Green Lantern, Camelot 3000, Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. They went straight to the Alan Moore stuff. Then Swamp Thing got spun off to its own magazine, which got canceled because Swamp Thing is one of those things that people that like it really like it, but it doesn't have that mainstream appeal.
No.
So if you try to do something for, and the Brazilians just didn't have the economy for a title like that, especially with newsstand distribution in the 80s when they had super inflation. I'm not even here in Portugal. It was hard to get the Swamp Thing magazines because they were off format. The little formats were easy to get. The bigger ones not so much. And then as soon as Alan Moore stopped, they canceled it. And it wasn't until about 10 years later that another publisher started with the post Alan Moore stuff. And it still read great. It didn't seem like it was something made in the 80s, and I was reading it in the late 90s. The stuff that was written by Rick Veitch.
Alan Moore's Swamp Thing was a cult hit. It wasn't a bestseller.
No.
It really was, one of those books that you couldn't get anyone to read because no one cared about Swamp Thing. But, he made his career on it. Everybody who did read it loved it. But it was a cult hit. It was like, the Byrne X-Men was a cult hit. Mm-hmm. It wasn't big time. It got bigger once Byrne left it. So it's weird how sometimes we think of, these books that have stood the test of time from like the late 70s and early 80s weren't necessarily the hits of the 70s and 80s.
Right.
I remember in the 90s when people were talking about Swamp Thing. And before that, I had never even heard of Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
That's when I really started hearing my friends talk about it. Oh, wait, I spoke and he left. Ain't that something?
He hit the wrong button again, I bet.
He's on the swamp. I'd almost be willing to bet money he hit the wrong button, too.
That's what he did last week. So. I got 10 new comics this week. I was like, "Wow, another big week for me." I've had
more than a month.
Actually, it was last week I only had one comic on my pull list. It was the week before I had 12. But this week I had 10. It was like, whoa. Well, one of them was a freebie. So more Swamp Thing, tripled Swamp Thing sales, but it was still minor sales numbers. Yeah, because people like me who jumped on Swamp Thing Volume 2 when it relaunched were gone by the time Moore was there with issue. I think I picked up my first Moore Swamp Thing was like around issue 21 or 22 because I had heard it was real good. So I was able to go and get it. And I think 20 was his first issue where he wrapped up the Martin Pascoe story. And then there was 21 where he started his own story. I might have tried it around 22, 23 because there had to be a month or two to build a buzz. That made me go, ooh. And it's funny. I think back, I have no idea where I heard this stuff too. Because it's like in the early 80s, where was buzz about comic books? I guess I mean I probably read whatever magazine I could get on comics.
But still Comic Scene that was published by Starlog.
Yeah, Comic Scene. That was not one of my favorites.
Right.
But I would get stuff like because my local comic shop opened in 81 when I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
And I would buy whatever magazines about comics they had there. But that wasn't until I was 16, 17. So that was interesting stuff. But the first comic I got this week was Bitter Root number 11. And this is, if you've never read Bitter Root before, this is a good issue to jump on. It not only is the start of a new story arc, and the first page basically breaks down the concept of what it is. This multi-generational story of this family in Harlem who fight monsters, and there's one type of monster, the Jinnu, who are men and women transformed by hate and intolerance into monsters. And then I think sometimes, because I just started this one like in the middle of the last story arc, so I'm kind of new to it, so I don't have the early issues. And then they discovered like there was a new type of monster that they didn't know how to deal. And there's like it's called Bitter Root because there's sort of like I don't know the local doctors or whoever who make up root medicine and root stuff to kind of fight off these monsters. And if you get turned into one of these jinzu, you can drink one of these root drinks. So it's all this folk medicine that they use to fight off the monsters. Well, when they're not using violence. Then there's another one that they just discovered with this, like, and it also takes place in the 1920s. The Inzondo, monsters born out of grief and trauma. And they don't know what to do with those. There he is. He's back.
So you guys didn't go off air?
No, you did.
The internet just went out.
Oh, okay.
And
We were okay. I'm
Oh.
just discussing Bitterroot, my first comic of the week.
All right. Let me take care of a few things. I'll be right back.
Okay. And what's interesting too about it is not only did the last story arc, which is the first one I came in the middle of, the villain kind of won, where the villain is this guy who kind of is all this bitter, angry guy who uses people's bitter, angry stuff, and he lives in this other dimension called Barzak. And they were fighting him to stop him from invading Earth, with monsters or whatever. And they defeated him, but he opened up all these portals around the world to Barzak opened up, and these kind of monsters came out of it. So now there's this new status quo in the 1920s Earth where these monsters can show up. So it's kind of it really, and the art is terrific by Sanford Green. I mean, they just create such a beautiful, rich world of in Bitterroot. The art just creates such a beautiful, rich world. I really been enjoying it. I heard good things about it, and I just I think it was issue 8 was the first issue I picked up. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to pick up issue 8 and give it I have embraced my childhood when it comes to reading comics, where I'm not. For a while, I was kind of like everyone else, where I'm like, well, I've got to get from issue 1, maybe I'll pick up the trade. Now I'm just like, if I want to pick up a new comic and I said issue 8, I just pick up issue 8. I don't care. That's what I did when I was a kid. I'm like, I'll catch on.
So something I've been finding left and right, but I only found 3 of them so far out of 7, is the book that I know more about the book than what's in the book. Thunder Agents by Wally Wood. I know it's supposed to be influenced by Man from U.N.C.L.E., James Bond, superheroes, and a lot of people keep trying to bring it back. DC almost tried to put it into the regular universe, which somehow I knew when that was announced it wasn't going to happen. I don't know. I had a premonition. I don't know.
Because, well, what it is some of the basic concepts of the Thunder Agents is that they're limited.
Yeah.
In terms of each one of their superpowers has a drawback. No man who can switch androids' bodies, but only has so many of them, has this invisibility cloak as his main power, which whenever he switches bodies, he loses the cloak. So he's always losing the cloak. There's Dynamo, who's the big strong guy, but only for an hour. He's got a power belt that he's got to turn on. And then there's Mentho, who has this helmet that gives him mental powers. But if he doesn't have the helmet, he's got no powers. And then there's who's the quick guy? The guy who's like the Flash. But every time he uses his powers, it ages him. So once again, he can't use his powers except in extreme circumstances. Yeah.
Right.
So it's like fitting that into the DC universe doesn't work, into a normal comic universe doesn't work, where nobody's powers have drawbacks. Doesn't work.
The way it worked, they actually killed a lot of people, and they were bringing back younger people to be these characters. Yeah. Like it was supposed to be like in continuity, but it blows my mind because after doing a little research on what's in these archive editions, there was like 20 issues of Thunder. This 20 issues and assorted one shots or little minis of some of the characters, and that's survived over 50, closer to 60 years, coming up on it. You know what I mean?
The last volume is from the 80s, is the 80s relaunch, which is the first time I read the Thunder Agents, and it's pretty good. It's got George Perez, it's got Steve Ditko, it's got a bunch of other good artists and writers from it in the 80s.
And I think I sold them at a freaking yard sale where I realized what I had. I remember I found it in some dollar bins because of the George Perez cover. And I couldn't find out anything about the freaking book. I'm pretty sure it's what I did. So, but the other thing that I got, I think I found the book that I'm going to get bound. All right. Have you guys ever heard of the Jack Kirby's Star God trilogy? The whole idea behind it.
Star God trilogy? No, you're breaking up.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought that was your thing.
Hey, turn off the TV for a minute, man. I think our internet's about to go down again. You guys may have the whole show to yourself if this internet keeps busting up.
Okay. Was that Captain Victory?
Yeah, it's Captain Victory. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Right.
Captain Victory is my favorite Jack Kirby series ever.
Well, I finally have 1 and 3. I now have the whole thing, which I'm,
Yeah, I've had the whole. I had a subscription to Captain Victory in the early '80s.
Oh, nice.
Before I could get to a comic shop, I actually subscribed to it.
Well, nice. Okay, I got you. There was like an issue.
It came in the mail from Pacific Comics.
Right. It was cool. And they got Kirby because when they were starting out, they told him, you total control and you own everything. And he was like, okay.
Well, I think he had a lot of that done before it was actually published. I remember hearing that somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the start, I think that's what they call it, man. I'm going by like a 20-some-year-old memory, right? But there for a while, the way this ends in issue 13, he rides off, and I thought Kirby was pulling from his New God stuff and had him looking like Orion flying through the sky, right? So I thought it was derivative. I never tried to put it, but there's a theory you can take most of Kirby's work, and it's one great big huge story. But the one that they nailed down is that in the 60s, I think it was like, I can see the book in my head. It's like Thor 127 or something like that. He did Ragnarok for the Norse gods. Right. He did it, right? And then you go to the New Gods. New God starts where Ragnarok ends. And supposedly on the first splash page of the New Gods #1, there's a little silhouette that may or may not be Thor. And in Hunger Dogs, somebody finds an old god's helmet and puts it on, and it looks like a bronze Thor helmet. It's like
I had heard that he had all the New Gods characters created when he went over to DC, and he was going to use them in Thor, but he didn't want to give Marvel any more characters.
Well, I think I had a Kirby. I think I have a Kirby collector somewhere where you see the actual sketches of Mr. Miracle, Light Ray, and Orion. Their colors a little bit different. But then you get to Captain Victory, and you get to the last 3 issues, and it turns out that with a wink and nod and little deception there, Captain Victory talks about the Ultimates and how he was raised and how he grew up and everything like that. And you pick up, it's on Apocalypse. And instead of calling them New Gods, he calls them Ultimates. And
see, I read Captain Victory long before I read the Fourth World stuff.
Yeah.
So I didn't pick up any of that stuff.
Right. Well, I picked it up in the 90s when there was people putting it together. You know what I mean? In front of me, and I sort of had an inkling of what they were talking about. But it turns out in the last one, you find out that is Orion stuff. This is the grandson of Darkseid, the son of Orion. Yeah. And he's escaped Apocalypse. Now, what gets me about this is that Kirby must have had it planned, because the way he describes his home planet, how it ends, is how the Hunger Dogs ends. And that's the one where people figured it out.
There's so much imagination in Captain Victory. Mm-hmm. It's just so crazy. There's so much new stuff in it that it's just amazing to me. Yeah. Years ago, Eric Larson wanted to publish a hardcover, an oversized hardcover version of Captain Victory, but could never find good enough artwork to do it from.
Well,
couldn't find the original art, couldn't find stats of it. Couldn't find anything. Couldn't find the stuff to make the book out of.
I'm hoping I could find the very panel that made me a Captain Victory fan, because I think it was this one. It was the first one I read as a kid, and they're fighting the hive. It's a bunch of gigantic alien insects, and it's brutal. That's the thing about it. It's brutal. But
there's real consequences in Captain Victory.
But
micro troops forward.
It's probably the next issue, and I'm not going to dig for it. But basically, you have like Captain Victory comes off like some 50s group, like, the Rangers, the Space Rangers or something, some like 50s concept. And you get in here and like the violence and the consequences are real. Like people are getting maimed and killed, But there's a scene where these gigantic insects are tunneling under Pittsburgh or something like that, and they come out and they grab people and eat them and take them down. Yeah. It's a horror movie all of a sudden, a sci-fi horror movie. But there's a part where Captain Victory's got his freaking eye ripped out and he's bleeding down there, and some of the Rangers had to pull him out. And they're like, "Do we need to get you back, Captain?" He went, "No, I've only been maimed." And I've only been maimed. I'm not wounded. I've only been maimed. Let's go. His eyeball is like bleeding in the socket, but he's like, I've only been maimed, not.
I can still fight.
Yeah,
come back and I'll bite your kneecap off.
But that very panel made me a fan of him because I thought that was hilarious. Like, there's a difference. Like, there's a difference between being maimed and whatever he said.
Much like No Man, Captain Victory also was. They had other bodies for him if he died.
Yeah.
But also, like No Man, he was running out of bodies. This guy's like, dude, you cannot die. You're running out of bodies.
I want to find.
Yeah, but he was mining all of his stuff. Not only new gods, because the having artificial bodies, you can see a link to OMAC.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Jack Kirby was always looking at stuff to get stuff from. He created a lot of stuff, but he also created it from stuff.
Yeah, he was a big fan of pulp science fiction.
Yeah. Let me show this picture here real quick, guys. This one, just to let people know what we're looking at here, because a lot of people are, this is towards the end of Kirby's career.
Yeah, this is the very end,
and he's still putting out monsters like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Wow.
That kind of looks like
Mantis.
Oh, the villain from Samurai Jack.
Oh, I don't. Okay.
Yeah.
There was a lot of imagination in the concepts and artwork of Captain Victory.
He's got a character in here looks like Triton from the Inhumans a little bit. The Deep Six. Oh, where is that? But were you asking a question, Daryl? I thought I heard something.
No,
that was just your own thoughts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
the internet.
I just said that was just a flesh wound when he had his eye ripped out.
Oh, I found it. It's got to be in this one because here's the original when I was a kid in my upgrade. There's only one issue of Captain Victory in the house, But a couple years ago, this is the one. Yeah, this is the one. I mean, this is probably, I think, the most underrated Kirby stuff ever. And I know it's Kirby, you got to look at it, but these are the insect people coming out of the ground, taking people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And just eating people.
Yeah.
They're kind of like if Darkseid was making parademons out of New Genesis bugs instead of the lowlies of Armageddon.
Mm-hmm. The next comic I got this week was the new issue of Post Americana.
Nice.
Which is the Steve Scroce post-apocalyptic story. Yeah, so we get I like that page, that big. This was kind of interesting because yet again, one of these post-apocalyptic stories, and we've got these, the sort of civilization that lives in this mountain that has all the technology and stuff, and they're going to want to go out and reconquer the rest of America, who's living like, Mad Max world. And so they've invented, they can manufacture stuff. So they manufactured all these, all these weapons of war, all these robots and things. And they've gone out and they've already conquered this one, town civilization. And one of our heroes is from that mountain land. And then a couple of other our heroes are from the outside world. And they got captured by the people who live in the middle of the mountain. And this guy right here saves them, and it turns out he's also some giant robot weapon of war that someone else has manufactured to look like old-time comic book characters. So it was just kind of funny to see these, regular weapons of war robots, and he talks like an old-time superhero too. And he good intestines in Post America. Yeah, there's a werewolf tearing through somebody's head over there. So that one's for Sleepy Reader, nice and gory.
Oh, gosh. Not ever gory. It's gory.
This was the comic that was too gruesome for Sleepy Reader. So it was a fun issue. I really enjoyed this one. I still don't know where it's going, but this issue was a fun ride.
Speaking of gruesome, I found the panel that made me a fan out of the book when I was like 10. All right. So I got to get this out because I like totally blew it a minute ago. You know, I had a blind fart, right? Here it is. This is the panel that made me a fan, right? He's standing there, right? You see how, well,
yeah.
Focus. Because I've been mauled, not maimed. I'm okay. All right.
Means he can still function.
So I'm like 10 or 11 years old reading that, and I'm like, this is either ridiculous or this is genius. And and for some reason I was like, that guy's a real hero. He's going to go on because he's been mauled, not maimed. He's going to do it. And I'm like, you go, man. So
yeah, I need to reread Captain Victory. I think the last time I read it was about 15 years ago.
Well, I'm going to get this bound. I've been trying to figure out what set of books I want to get bound, just to have a bound comic. Yeah. Just to get a bound comic, in the collection. I've gone through Planetary in my head and all this other stuff. And I'm like, when I got these 2 issues, I got them both for 99 cents. They're affordable if you want to go out and get them. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever collected these.
There was an annual or a special too, wasn't there?
Yeah, I have that. Yeah, they look like 3 Musketeers. But if
I think there is a Galactic Rangers trade paperback, maybe from from Dynamite or something. And I know they collected Silver Star.
Well, that's
I have Silver Star, but Captain Victory has not been collected. Like I said, Eric Larson tried to do it about 15 years ago, but there just wasn't the material to print from.
Okay,
if you're going to collect Captain Victory, you'll probably have to print right from the comics.
So just to make sure I'm clear on what Paolo is saying there, I was about to bring up that Kurt Busiek, Alex Ross, some other people got together with, I think, Dynamite, and they came out with an 8-issue miniseries where what the Kirby estate still had, some, the PC stuff and what he had at home. They did a whole miniseries called Kirby, and then they had a Captain Victory and a Silver Star and something else come out of that. So was it that Silver Star collected, or was it the
No, it's that Silver Star.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So now I know what to look for.
Was that Kirby or was that Kirby Genesis? Because I remember a Kirby Genesis.
Yeah,
Kirby. There it is.
Image collected it.
Okay.
Let me see what year this. And this was when they were going to do Captain Victory too, but couldn't find the material. There's the Jack Kirby Silver Star.
I didn't even know that existed. Oh man, yeah. I think I got.
This is the first time I read Silver Star. I really liked it. This came out in 2007. And like I said, they wanted to do Captain Victory at the same time too, but couldn't find any of the original artwork or stats of it or anything like that.
Well, I've got 5 issues of Silver Stars, so I may just try to get that.
Yeah.
Silver Star is a weird book. I really get the idea you have to read it all at once to understand.
Well, I did, and I really enjoyed Silver Star. Once again, I have to reread it though because I haven't read it since 2007. So,
well, it opens up with that little girl singing a song or a poem or something.
It was very philosophical. It was a very thoughtful one. Yeah, very thoughtful one.
Yeah,
I think you remember the Kirby stuff that Topps published back in the 90s, late 90s.
I saw some of the Kirby stuff in there. And I've never seen the Captain Victory Graphite edition from Two Amaros. It's been on my Amazon wish list for about 15 years, but for some reason I never got it. They just printed a lot of Xeroxes of the pencils of Captain Victory.
All right, that's 2 of you guys telling me Captain Victory bound would be a good idea. So I think it's cool.
Yeah, I had some of the Kirby Genesis books.
There we go. Let me get him up there. Where are you at here?
I'm hiding in the corner still.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I think where they ran the new Captain Victory stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. They spun out. That was a great series. Yeah.
But Sleepy was right. They never put out a trade of the original Captain Victory stuff when Dynamite was doing that. I was looking for it. I had my eyes open for that and it didn't exist.
I really, having these conversations on YouTube and stuff like that. I used to talk about some of the weird stuff that Kirby did in the 70s. It felt weird at the time. 2001, Machine Man, that era. Devil Dinosaur. It felt really weird back then. And then after having these little conversations on shows like this and stuff over the years, you really get the idea that Kirby was always moving forward. His stuff felt weird at the time because he wasn't doing what anybody else was doing still.
What I think it was? This is to me the difference between Jack Kirby and everybody else, especially in the 70s, and why some people find his work in the 70s difficult and off-putting or weird, just like you say.
Yeah.
Is because Jack Kirby was creating whole new cultures.
Yeah.
So when he was creating a book, he wasn't just creating characters, he was creating whole cultures to go along with the characters. So, and it's just like, when there's culture shock. It's tough for us as readers to fully embrace, and it's like if we were to go to another culture, if we were to suddenly be in Vietnam in a whole other culture, it would be difficult for us as human beings we wouldn't adapt right away. It would take us a while. And I think that's what Jack Kirby was doing in the 70s, because most of his stuff was involving whole other new cultures. So it was off-putting to people.
He created universe. Go ahead, Scott. I heard you.
It's funny, as much as people associate Kirby with superheroes, he worked in a lot of other genres too, and that ties into the world building aspects of what you're talking about.
I think one of the things I've noticed is Kirby has two ways to begin something, right? Either from scratch, like Devil Dinosaur. You start out with the cavemen. Even with 2001, if you go back and read the book, he had the future and the cavemen telling those stories at the same time, right? Or he would take something and like Norse mythology, it ends at Ragnarok. That's where I'm going to start the story. What happens after Ragnarok? You know what I mean? Eternals, Devil Dinosaur. I mean, I'm going to get going. He created so many universes from the get-go. Commandy, OMAC. It almost feels like a lot of this stuff could tie in. And I don't know if that was by design or if it's because it was Kirby doing it. OMAC, I think that's future Captain America. That could have been a Marvel character, but they made him mad and he kept it. Yeah,
I think a lot of Kirby stuff too. He had two different kind of modes of creation. He had some sort of his thoughtful, Kirby culture shock. Yeah, he had some because he could do stuff like Devil Dinosaur is extremely accessible. He could do stuff like, let's take a popular something and make it into a comic. And then like Devil Dinosaur was just that. I think that was originally supposed to be an animated series. So it was something that was supposed to appeal to kids. It was like dinosaurs and kids. That's a pretty simple idea. And he could kind of do that well and run with it. But then he could do stuff, like Captain Victory, which is kind of a little more esoteric, or Silver Star, or even I think it started with the Silver Surfer. That was kind of his first, in sort of the modern era, his first whole creating of another culture was the Silver Surfer. But Stan Lee kind of grounded it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Kirby was, he was very religious and things like that. But when he created the Marvel Universe, he was in his 40s. So then he's in his 50s. He's getting there. So of course he's getting more philosophical as he gets older. Kids, grandkids, life changes you, and of course your storytelling is going to go that way. If you go back and look at his stuff in the 40s, he was just trying to figure out how to make your eye travel around with a lot of action. Right. Like, how do I go down the page? And then he became the story. I think he was his best storyteller in the 70s. I really do.
Me too. And Sleepy Reader just said new gods only pretended to be superheroes. That's a common thing now. Yeah. Because new gods really weren't superheroes at all.
No. Yeah, and then it's like I've had this talk also about people thinking the Eternals were just him copying himself or whatever with the New Gods. New Gods was based on religion and mythology, but wait a minute, but religion, a whole lot of religion, and then you turn around and the Eternals were based off mythology. That's why they have names like
the Eternals was specifically based off of Chariot of the Gods.
Yeah,
that's another thing where he took something that was popular at the moment and created his own thing out of it.
Yeah, because compared to the New Gods, the Eternals read almost like a documentary, with and a bit like he was trying to do a reality show, because the whole conflict, even in the book, seems a bit scripted.
Yeah, he was doing because the weird hairdo.
Yeah, because you don't really feel that when the Eternals and the Deviants are fighting that anyone's in any imminent danger. and they spend a lot of time talking about what they're going to do and what does it mean that the Celestials are here.
Yeah. That was definitely one of his more thoughtful things. But like I said, that came right out of something popular at the time.
But there is religion in the Eternals because the Celestials kind of have names that kind of represent Hebrew angelic names.
That's all. That's also why I've never liked. I only like Jack Kirby's Eternals. I don't really like any other because they weren't supposed to be in the Marvel universe. And the thing about the Celestials is they were supposed to be so much more powerful. They were supposed to represent a force that we couldn't even deal with. We couldn't do anything with the Eternals. They were out. Our fate was out of our own hands as people, and there was nothing we could do to affect the Eternals at all. But then when they integrated them into the Marvel universe, they just became the next level of power. And if you had your Eternals slaying sword, you could kill them.
Yeah,
so it's just kind of
like everyone but Kirby wanted to integrate them into the Marvel universe.
Yeah,
that's when you see all those little bits about having captions talking about Nick Fury and Shield, and making sure that can you please put the Hulk in that story, but it's not really the Hulk, and you can tell that there are no superheroes around,
right?
Because if there were, it just wouldn't have worked.
That cosmic powered Hulk issue was one of the issues I had as a kid. And I spent so much time puzzling over that issue because I was interested, of course, in comics as a kid, but I was also interested in how comics were made. And I was always looking for behind the scenes stuff of how comics were made, which is why I loved all the Fireside Origin books. And it's also one of the reasons that Omega the Unknown is one of my favorite series, besides being a good series, as it was like rebooted like 2 times in 11 issues. And you could see them trying new things in it because something obviously wasn't working sales-wise. And that cosmic powered Hulk, because I used to puzzle, I'm like, because like you said, there's no, from every indication, that's not the Marvel Universe. That cosmic powered, but the Hulk's in it, this cosmic powered Hulk, and you're like, and I remember going, why is that? Why isn't the Hulk?
I wish we had
realizing that somebody wanted the Hulk in this comic, but the guy making the comic didn't want the Hulk in this comic.
Yeah, he didn't want that to be part of it at all. I've read several things where it actually upset him when they did that.
I've never been a fan of folding a universe into another universe like that.
Yeah,
but it's amazing that I could suss that out just reading the comic when I was, I don't know, 10, 12, 14.
Well, I wish we had like a Cavern of Chaos historian, because we've had a talk about that Hulk. Marvel was pulling so much stuff that not only did we have that Hulk in the Eternals, we had the Hulk that popped up in Omega. We had a whole thing where I went nuts because I thought it was the same Hulk robot going everywhere as a kid. There were so many fake Hulks popping up at these books I read when I was 6 or 7. When I finally got to talk about it here, I was going nuts. Like, it's not the same one. I know I'm remembering this, and stuff like that. So, yeah, if you wanted, and they even had a magazine with a fake Hulk. You know what I mean? I'm like,
But the Hulk TV show was already on when that came out, right? We're talking 76, 77.
Yeah.
The late 70s, the Hulk popped up in everything because that TV show.
And they would put it on the comic book that our TV sensation,
Marvel's TV sensation. This was very good. This is issue 3 of Ha Ha. It's got a different artist every issue. This issue, I guess instead of a clown, we've got a mime. And this one is it's written by the Ice Cream Man guy, W. Maxwell Prince, the Ice Cream Man writing. And this one, Roger Langridge is drawing. And it was funny because I wasn't sure if I would like this because just flipping through it, I wasn't very fond of the art, but reading it was really absorbing. And these can just go places that, because they're all done in one stories, and they can just go places you're not used to. And this one was the story about a mime who couldn't make his rent, and it's told almost without words because he's a mime. So there's some sound effects and some, a little occasionally some stuff, but no real talking. And it's about a mime who can't make his rent because nobody likes him as his mime until in a garbage dump, I think it was, he discovers a robot. And then the robot becomes part of his act. Here, let me show you there's the robot.
Man. Yeah.
And the robot becomes part of his act, but things don't last. And it's just like it ends on a sad note, and it's just
it sounds like what you just described.
I don't know where you're going. That's what's good about this. All of a sudden the story takes twists and turns because who's ever read a story about a robot and a mime before? You know, it's not exactly your average story.
It sounds like a Futurama plot for real.
I was going to say,
when you say that, I thought that looked like Bender.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's also because Bender's designed to look like every other robot.
See, I have never read those, and people kept saying, "Oh, it's really good. You should read it." It's like, well, what's it about? It's really good. You should read it. I'm like, now I have an idea of what this particular book is.
Yeah, Ha Ha is new. There's only 3 issues of Ha Ha.
Yeah, I knew.
Have you read Ice Cream Man?
I have not read that either.
Okay, Ice Cream Man is all kind of done in one horror stories.
Mm-hmm.
But there's sort of a backstory going on, but not really about this Ice Cream Man. The Ice Cream Man he's not, see, in the olden days, you'd call him a host, but he doesn't act like one of the EC Comics hosts because he doesn't talk directly to the reader. He's just kind of in the background, sometimes moving the action along, sometimes not. Sometimes he's just in the background. And they're all kind of done in one horror, and people have kind of been waiting because I think Ice Cream Man's on like issue 22 now. People have kind of been waiting for the meta story to happen, but it never really did. And there was some like meta story in like issues, I don't know, maybe 6 through 12 with this other guy. I forget what he wasn't an Ice Cream Man. He was like, I don't know, a FedEx guy or something, some cosmic FedEx guy. I can't even remember what he was. And there was some little thing going on between the two, but then they abandoned that. And lately, they've been sort of embracing sort of, I don't know, I guess you'd call them gimmick issues or at least themes. Like they did a Dr. Seuss issue where the whole story was told like a Dr. Seuss story. The last one was a talk show issue. So that they come up with themes to tell the horror story within. And like, and the same, and Ha Ha is kind of the same except with clowns. Like the first issue was about a horror. I don't even know if you'd call them horror. I guess they may be existential horror stories, Ha Ha. Because the first one was about a clown. The second one had a woman, but it was like she put on clown makeup, but it was really about a little girl whose mother was mentally ill. And the mentally ill mother would put on clown makeup. I guess that was the time. And this one was about that mime. So there's like a clown theme going on, but it's good stuff either way, whatever.
So like somebody killing the children. I've been hearing so many great things about that. So this past weekend, I actually went to an LCS because I don't have one within about an hour and a half of here. So I never get new books. So I found issues 10 through, I think, 15. So I'm going to actually start with issue 11 and see what that's about.
And
yeah, I read some of that.
Ice Cream Man, right? Ice Cream Man. That's what you're talking about, right?
No, he's talking about some things killing the children.
Yeah, I'm talking about something killing the children.
Making sure, gotcha.
But he was talking about Ice Cream Man.
Right.
Yeah, man.
I read some of the early someone's killing something on Hoopla. They were pretty good. I have to read some more of those.
Yeah, I mean everybody's talking about them, so I'm like, you know what?
Yeah,
I'll see if I can find them.
They're expensive first issues.
Yeah. I mean, they'll probably end up being books I read online because just can't find them.
Yeah, I use Hoopla, the library app, a lot to read stuff. Nice. That's pretty good. Crimson Flower is the next one I got, which is Matt Kint and Matt Lesniewski. I like the artwork. I like the crazy sort of, once again, underground comics influenced artwork. That's, very kind of outsider art, strange, goofy stuff. And another sort of Matt Kint conspiracy story, except this one is a more personal conspiracy. These fight scenes are insane. They're almost liquid.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's about this girl who saw her father killed some assassin when she was a kid, and now she's an adult and hunting down these assassins. And it's just an excuse for Matt Lesniewski to draw all sorts of crazy stuff. And the storytelling is a little hypnotic and hallucinogenic. And it's just fun. It's just fun stuff. Probably it's Dark Horse Comics, probably 4, 5, 6 issues. I don't even know. We'll have to see.
Guys, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you we got a huge lag because I'm just now getting comments about integrating people into other universes. So
yep.
I think we have a full 5-minute lag that I just want to get out there. So if people are asking questions and we're not getting to them, we're just getting them like 5 minutes after you post them, or we move on 5 minutes ahead.
My comment on incorporating Watchmen into the DC universe is that it's pointless.
Yep.
And to me, it's like this is my analogy for incorporating Watchmen in the DC universe. It's as if you wanted to incorporate Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet into the Shakespeare universe. First thing you have to do is bring Romeo and Juliet back to life, which totally misses the point of the play Romeo and Juliet. It's no longer Romeo and Juliet at that point.
Well,
so it's kind of like, well, why?
Well, see, here's the other thing. To me, the bloom was off the roads when they did before Watchmen. That was my shock and awe and whatever. Okay. So when they did this stuff with bringing the Watchmen in with Doomsday Clock and all that stuff, do you hear anybody talking about it? It's like it never happened. It's like it never happened. I mean,
well, you got to keep
if they wanted to bring it into DC universe, they just should have had them show up one day and not even bothered to explain it because no one cared about the explanation. Crimson Flower is sadly just 4 issues, Sleepy Reader tells us.
You all right, Scott?
Yeah.
You all right?
Wake up, Scott.
No, I would like to get a word in edgewise, every once in a while. So.
No, nothing for you, young man.
Go ahead, Scott.
Scott left us?
Well.
Okay.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next time we'll talk to him. I didn't see that coming.
No.
So anyway, we've had Scott leave us. We've had the internet go down. It's been an interesting night. I was like on my end.
Come on back, Scott. You just have to shout loud enough. The next comic I got was Tarna, which I'm really enjoying. I like that cover. I'm really enjoying the art in it.
Is that a new run?
This is a new one from Heavy Metal.
Okay, because I have one from a few years ago.
This is a new series. I missed issue 2 and haven't even noticed that I missed issue 2.
If I got that over here.
And it's good. I'm told she's the one from the Heavy Metal movie. And I'm enjoying it. Who's doing this? Stephanie Phillips and Christian Rosado. With colors by Jessica Colleen, lettered by Marshall Dillon.
Now, the thing with Tarna coming out, the chick that came out there, man, I've seen so many people try to make a kerfuffle about her for whatever reason that they get the thing that people have been using to win the arguments is that it was a Mobius correction. She was created by Mobius, so when people hear that, it's like she gets elevated for being some kind of sexist depiction in heavy metal. I don't know why they pick her out of a heavy metal movie of all things to kind of go that way with her. And then somebody will be like, well, she's created by Mobius. And all of a sudden it's like the conversation's over, I messaged Scott, see if he's all right, see if he's going to answer me.
Mm-hmm. Then we got Rain Like Hammers, number 3.
What is that?
Which I don't know how many issues this one is, and I don't know where it's going. Because issue 1 seems to be so far not connect to issues 2 and 3. Issue 3 is kind of a continuation of issue 2, which started with, I guess it was this supervillain crash landing on this giant spaceship city and taking over the body of this, I don't know, robot butler. No, he's bred to be a butler thing. This city he landed on has a very, very tight caste system, and he's trying to figure out I think he's trying to rescue his daughter. I don't even know, they didn't mention that this issue. But I'm enjoying this Brandon Graham stuff. But I'm wondering what issues 2 and 3 have to do with issue 1. I'm still not serious. Gore Vidal says this Tarna is a new series. 1 came out a few years ago. And Daryl's I think he's trying to find the one.
I'm trying to find it. I can't find it.
Oh, well.
But I remember because I just bought it from a guy a few weeks ago. Well, actually a couple months ago now.
If they see this show, we'll know when they bring Romeo and Juliet into the DC universe. Yup. Yup. And then I picked up, this is one that people mentioned to me on my video last week. They're like, oh, I'm surprised you didn't pick this one up. And I'm like, I didn't see it. It's James Stokoe, Orphan and the Five Beasts from Dark Horse. Once again, I don't know how many issues this is. But I really enjoyed this first issue. James Stokoe created such a rich world. It's, old. It seems to be like Japanese influenced. Old master trains this young orphan to go out and fight these monsters. Nothing revolutionary in the story, but the James Stokoe art just creates such a rich universe. And one thing is funny is he's got these drawings that everybody has got so much fabric on them. It's like everybody has got this wrinkly, bulky fabric that I did not know the lead character was female until the next issue blurb said, issue number 2, a brave warrior following her master's final wishes. And I went, her? I never noticed that was a her, because like everybody's in these incredibly bulky outfits. There she is right there. But if you like go back to the very earliest ones, you can only very subtly see that she's got breasts under that bulk and just like a couple panels. So it was like I didn't even know this lead character was female until I read that blurb. So I found that amusing. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Swamp Thing thumbnail got me more excited. We started out our show with Swamp Thing.
Swamp Thing
is Pooh coming back? We'll have to see.
No, he's not coming back. I did say that. Asked him to come back on. Told him that I know that we need to slow down. We will. It's live. We get in there. And I mean, the door's open. I mean, the thing is nobody was disrespecting anybody on purpose. We just get to talking and we get going, and every now and then we talk over each other. So
and I seem to have 10 comics to show, so I'm trying to get through them. Usagi Yojimbo, the latest issue.
Love you, Usagi.
I think I just won an app. Yeah.
A Frazetta homage. You don't often see Frazetta homages on Usagi Yojimbo covers.
I got to look it up and see what I won on eBay, but I think I won an out of print volume 33 collection of Usagi.
But it's as good as any other Usagi Yojimbo issue. So
love me some Usagi.
We're putting it away. So. And then here's a surprise I wasn't expecting, but I got it for free anyway. A reprint of Invincible #1.
Nice.
That they put out in conjunction with the TV show on Amazon Prime.
Yep. Yeah, they released 3 episodes early, apparently, the day before it was supposed to have started today, I think. I don't know if I'm going to watch it. I read a few issues of Invincible, and it was like Superman meets Spider-Man. Like
it's good stuff. This one's called Invincible 1 Amazon Animated Series Promo. Nice. That's his official Indicia name. So that was that was a surprise. I did not expect that. Let's see. Oh, this is my last book of the week. Once in Future number 17. This one's been good. Once again, as I was saying in my video, like this is the old one of my set. Seven, like all the comics I've got are like 1, 2, 3, 4. There's so many miniseries out that I'm getting that I've got like nothing reaches 17.
Not, you know, we've been lucky to see anything reach 13 or 20 for like the last 5 or 6 years. So that's not surprising.
But Kieran Gillen, Dan Mora, and Tamara Bonvillain continue their Grandma Buffy the Vampire Slayer story with her grandson as they fight characters from old British literature who are coming back to wreck the world. Chief among them being Merlin and King Arthur. So that's been a good book, but it's funny how everything, and I've gotten so many new series in the last 2 months. I've got so many issues at 1, 2, or 3, so many series at like 1, 2, or 3. There's just like hardly anything out there that's been around for a while. I mean, Usagi Yojimbo has been around forever too, but this latest series is also only at issue 17. Even though I have like 250 issues of Usagi. So, yeah, that nothing reaches up big numbers anymore. Invincible, which used to be a big number, isn't a big number anymore.
It's amazing because I knew. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Daryl.
I was just going to say Invincible was ended at like 200 and something.
No, it was like 128.
Was it?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. It wasn't up near 200. It was just over. I think it was 128.
Yep. Which one am I thinking of that ended at just over 200? Wasn't that one then?
Invincible is like the opposite of Spawn. I knew some people that collected it, but the people who collected it didn't talk about it. But they came out the omnibus, and it was like everybody knew Invincible all of a sudden. You know, nobody ever talked about it. And I think this was around the time Bendis was doing his Dark Avenger stuff. So everybody was talking about Civil War and stuff, if I remember right. And his Walking Dead.
Yeah, I was buying Invincible in the Absolute editions. What are they called? Whatever those Ultimate collections, which are like 12 issues hardcover at one a year. I was buying it like that until around issue like I think 115. I was like, you know what? I want to start buying the regular comic. And then like 2 months later, they're like, Invincible is ending next year. I'm like, I just started buying the comic itself.
Well, I'll tell you it's a petty reason, but I'll tell you why I didn't collect the book. Because when I picked up an issue, I couldn't get over Superman having a porn stash. And I'm not being funny. I really couldn't get past that. You know what I mean? I can believe Clark Kent can get by with the glasses, but you know, if Invincible's dad had a secret identity, that mustache would give it away. You know what I mean? I'm like, you know.
Yeah, especially his secret identity as a novelist, and he looks exactly the same.
Yeah, and he's an alien.
So we know aliens have mustaches.
Yeah.
You got a hello, Daryl.
Hey, Gretzky.
Nice.
He was on the show last night.
Yeah, I still have to watch that. I was watching your back to back the Stay Puft and Varangian Vigilante shows with you.
Nice. They're fun. Those are a lot of fun. Origin stories.
Well, I was going to try to do it when we had 12 people, but we got like 10 now, which, you know, it seems like it's always waiting too long before we peak. Go ahead and plug your stuff there, Daryl.
What's up in my blog? Oh, tomorrow I've got a podcast, Origin Stories with California Blend. That's it.
And what's your channel? Let everybody know your channel too.
It's Simply Incredible Podcast because I'm very modest.
Mm-hmm. And for people that, if I was going to recommend something people sort of maybe watch or check out to kind of get a taste of you actually make it to San Diego Comic-Con, don't you?
Yes. Yes.
And you live stream from your hotel.
Yes. Yes. The live stream from the hotel, which is so much fun, which I won't get to do until next year. And then I when I go to Heroes Con, live stream from the hotel every night.
Yeah, Heroes Con's the one I'm missing over here. I skipped the year before, and then we had this. So there we go. You know.
Mr. Gretzky and Hans tell us Invincible made it to 144. That's right, 12 times 12. I wonder why I thought it ended around 130.
I wonder why I thought it ended in the 200.
Yeah, it won 144 issues.
Hey.
Well,
I must have started buying it around issue 128 then. I had my numbers wrong, but it was right near the end I started buying it, individual issues. Before that, I was buying the Ultimate editions. The Invincible, what are they called again? The Ultimate Collection. Those are nice collections that Image puts out, those 12-issue collections, which is also why Image books also run in 12-issue multiples, so they could put them in those Ultimate collections.
Okay, so you guys have heard the Immortal Hulk, right? You've heard of this book, The Immortal Hulk.
Yeah, Immortal Hulk. Okay. I've read some of it.
Well, I'm gonna give you some interesting numbers here. I found this the other day, and I was like, I got to bring this to the show, and it just popped in my head. Right, there's 47 issues of the Immortal Hulk out there, right?
Right.
But if you were to buy every book that has come out of Immortal Hulk and cataloged and stuff, it comes to 244 books.
Wow, you mean all the spin-offs and things?
No, variant covers and reprints.
Oh, variant covers. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Variant covers and stuff of that thing up there. I don't know why I did that. It never shows up. I just out of habit.
That's one of the things that I notice when I'm reading the Mike's Amazing World of Comics website, because you can get a list of all the comics a publisher put out that year. But ever since everything started having variants, the list has over 2,000 individual comics per year, but it's actually only half of that. It's just lists like that. It's kind of ridiculous.
See, when I first noticed that the variants were getting out of hand was when Star Wars #1 come out, and there was like 100 variants of #1.
Oh, it was well out of hand by then, but yeah, that was out of hand.
That's when I really was like, this has gotten completely ridiculous.
Like I said, I can remember when Gen 13 #1 came out with 13 covers in the 90s, and we all thought that was the most insane thing we'd ever heard of. Mm-hmm. And now that's just another Wednesday.
Yeah, that's the truth. I think the two variant cover stunts that maybe kind of rolled my eyes, one sounded like it would be cool, and then I actually had my hands on them. Well, the first one was they had a Justice League book during the DC 52. They had a variant cover for every state in the United States.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Yeah.
I remember that one.
I went to an antique shop over last weekend, and like over half of them were there for $1. You know, they've been there for months. The other one was this is the one I thought would have been cool, but Mars Attacks. I don't know. I can't remember if it was Dynamite or Boom or who was doing it.
Dynamite.
The first issue, they had the variants for every variant was a card from the original card series in the 50s. So you could have gotten a complete set of Mars Attack cards, comic book size, at $4 a pop or something, you know? So,
yeah. Hey.
And then the worst gimmick, I don't know if it's a variant cover, we've said it before, was that issue of Man of War or something from Malibu where they actually put a hole through the entire comic to show somebody getting shot in the chest at the end.
I like to collect variant covers on my iPad.
I mean, that is some dedication to a gimmick right there.
Yeah.
Put a hole going all the way through the book just for the last page.
I need to find that book because that would tell me when I started working in a comic book shop. You know, that came out somewhere around my, I don't know, beginning or something. So
comic shop. Here is something that Tim's going to find interesting. Another one of my miscellaneous magazines is ARG. And it turns out that this is like a benefit magazine from the 80s for, stopping homophobia. When is it from? Mad Love, 1988.
Wow.
So it's got all sorts of the big guys in it who you've heard of. Who is it? Alan Moore, Steve Bissett, Rick Veitch, Dave Gibbons, Gary Leach, Bill Sienkiewicz, Harvey Pekar, Art Spiegelman, Kevin O'Neill, Neil Gaiman, Brian Talbot. Well, the interesting thing is Dave Sim on page 50 has a Wolveroach story. And I don't know if this has appeared anywhere else.
Wolveroach.
I want to pull out my Cerebus that actually looks like it's around the 70s or 80s, but I don't know. Let me see.
Well, 88, so it would have been from, but it's got a Wolveroach story with a pretty funny joke that has to do with, the whole theme of the book. That's what made me think it hadn't appeared before. But yeah, I was like, oh, look at this. I forgot that existed.
Wow.
Some Frank Miller stuff.
Yeah, I definitely need to look that up. I've never even heard of that. You said ARG in the 70s. Yes. They had some a Marvel comic or comics that was like, it was funny stuff, and I thought it was like reprinting. Maybe I'm getting it up. Not Brand Eck like.
In Mad Love Publishing, wasn't that Alan Moore's own his self-publishing imprint that he did big numbers on?
I want to say it was. I've heard it. He's definitely attached to it. I don't know if he's the owner. I don't know enough about it.
I think he was.
What is
Published
this?
Oh, that's a Dave McKean cover. I thought it was Sienkiewicz. I wasn't looking at it close. But we get a Dave McKean cover and a Gilbert and Beto Hernandez back cover. Just pretty good. Oh, is this Dominic? Don't know. Brian Boland strip.
Nice.
Bill Elliott, Tony Reed. I think a lot of them are British. There's the Frank Miller one. From 2 pages from Frank Miller from 1988. So nice. pretty cool looking through this one. And like I said, and it was that Dave Sim Wolveroach story that was kind of the highlight of it for me.
That is cool. I'm gonna have to look up. Yeah, go ahead, Daryl.
I was just saying that was awesome. I've never seen or heard of that. That's great.
I remember getting it now back when I was in school.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here thinking I've seen all kinds of bibliographies for Alan Moore at least and stuff, and I've never even seen that mentioned. So, and it starts with A, so it would be up towards the top. You know what I'm saying?
Right. 2 A's. I think since it's magazine size and it was a benefit, it probably doesn't get a lot of notice.
Yeah. Well, guys, we're going to have to start winding it up. An hour and a half is almost flown by here a little bit. We're going to be having ice cream tonight. I found out. Yeah.
But before we wind it up, I want to show you one more magazine.
I've got to go get the ice cream.
And this one's weird. This is Survivors #1. And what's weird about this one, let me show the inside artwork. I remember liking this way back when, and I reread it and enjoyed it. This is one of the first, what year did this come out? One of the first indie comics I ever got, 1983. And this is like the preview issue, and it's magazine size. But then the first issue was comic book size. So it's like and they also changed the name on it to They Were Chosen to Be Survivors. And sometimes you can find those in back issue bins, but you never see this one because it's magazine size.
That tag you just said that that sounds familiar. They were chosen to be survivors. That rings a bell. So yeah,
that I've seen in back issue bins. Not in years, since I don't go to many back issue bins these days. But I know that one is out there. But this one you just never see because it's the wrong size.
That's awesome.
Oh,
and the other cool one, which I really liked, I remember liking this one in the 80s, and I reread it and liked it now. From Aircell. Do you remember Aircell?
No.
They put out what was those elves? They put out, they were fairly big indie comic in the mid after the black and white boom.
Yeah, Barry Blair.
Barry Blair, he did stuff in it. He's the consulting editor on this. But as far as I know, this is the only magazine they ever put out.
Nice.
And it's a story of these punks. And I think they're in. It's funny because the back cover is a photo of what looks like the New York City subways, but the story takes place in London, and it's about this, kid who's like 15 or 16, and he's like, he's a runaway and living in this sort of underground and fighting with the skinheads, and he just kind of wants to get out of the whole scene. So it's his story, but it's a pretty well done comic. It's this is one that Terrence Comic Crack would like. I read that for the first time since the 80s and enjoyed it.
Nice. Well, Daryl, you came on an eventful night. We've had internet go down.
I hope it wasn't me. Like, that guy won't shut up.
Well, because you're here and because your show is mostly about, you spend a lot more time talking about sports memorabilia. Here's something that you don't usually have, which is a racing car sponsored by Hitler. This is the 1937 Auto Union Type C Streamliner. It was created to run specifically in one track, the Avus Berlin, which still exists, but now is a section of the Berlin freeway system. Unfortunately, the car had some issues and only finished fourth in the hands of Bernd Rosemeyer. And a year later, Rosemeyer got himself killed in an even more extreme version of this car, while trying to go for a speed record. This is a 118 version of the car. So the wheels are covered. You can take these off, but it's not recommended. The cockpit opens. You can see the details inside. The wheel turns. So do these wheels, and if you look inside, you can see the suspension.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and the engine cover comes out, and you can see the details of the 16-cylinder engine, which in 1937 put out 560 horsepower.
Oh, wow.
And this car was sponsored by Hitler because when Mercedes wanted to get back into Grand Prix racing in 1934, they convinced the German government that it was a good propaganda tool, and they got a 500,000 Deutsche Mark sponsorship, which nowadays would be about $3 million. And then Ferdinand Porsche had a chance meeting with Hitler and convinced him that Auto Union, which was the product of the merger of 4 different car companies, should also get some of that money. So Hitler split the difference between the two. They only got 250,000 Deutsche Marks each, and the people at Mercedes were very, very angry, especially because Porsche used to work for them in the 1920s.
Wow. So when I first see that, I was like, if it was painted white, I would think Speed Racer.
But that's the thing. Back in the day, cars had the racing colors from their countries, and Germany's racing color was white. But because these cars were made for what was called the 750 kilo formula, the cars couldn't exceed 750 kilos in weight. And it went a little bit over, and the best way that they could remove weight was by removing the paint, so you could see all the aluminum under it.
Wow.
So that's how the German racing cars became known as Silver Arrows.
That is awesome.
I remember years ago, like I would talk about, like I went up 77, hit 81 north, and all stuff like that. And I have other people like from other countries being like, I love hearing Americans talk about highways. I love when I hear everybody else in the world use the metric system. It's awesome.
Sleepy Reader here has an interesting comment. Cover buyers are steering the ship of the comics industry, replacing readers. I don't know if they're steering the ship, but they're certainly being counted on.
Well,
I think now when you're making a new comic, you're counting on sales to cover buyers, and you're trying to figure out ways to make cover buyers buy extra covers to boost up your sales. I think I don't know if that's steering the ship, but they're certainly one of the propellers.
Well, the other thing is that like I don't know if we've talked about it here, or I've definitely talked about it at other play and maybe some other shows or something over the years. But slowly we all started coming up with the idea that it's like they're not really buying comics. It's like it's just replaced trading cards. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it's like we're buying for the covers. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you flip through a box and you like the covers.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I have to admit that was a cover buy.
Yeah.
Hold it up. That's from Iron Man 2, folks. So.
Yeah. So, there you go.
Yeah, that's something that I really don't. Something that I really don't like is when they do. Oh, this is a Deadpool variant cover or a Squirrel Girl variant cover, and the comic has nothing to do with either Deadpool or Squirrel Girl. But the character does not appear in that comic. It's not even a guest star, and they mark it to me.
Once again, that's them trying to figure out how to get cover buyers to buy it.
Yeah,
that's all that's like. These cover buyers are never going to buy this issue of whatever. Let's try linking it up with a popular theme. Then they'll have to buy it. That's all that is.
And they do, because if that particular cover is rarer, then they don't care what's inside.
Right. When you're a cover buyer, you're buying it for the cover. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, back in the New 52, they had one where Darwin Cook, he did a cover of all the New 52s, and I will say those were pretty sweet. I like Darwin Cook.
Yeah, I just got a Grayson. I found a Grayson at an antique shop left over from that and stuff. Yeah, I try to grab those when I see those.
Yeah.
Here's the thought I had with collectors this week, is that you always hear, like, especially on YouTube, comic collectors going, "Oh, I love the hunt. I love to go out and hunt down comics." And to me, that's not hunting. That's gathering. And I think collecting, but I think collecting is like bred into us. It's in our genes. In that, like I said, if you actually wanted to hunt, you could. I mean, there's endless hunting clubs.
Okay.
So if you want to indulge yourself in hunting, you actually can. But collecting is gathering, and what I see it as is, what is gathering? It's being surrounded by abundance makes us feel good. I think that's why people collect things. They surrounded by abundance makes us feel good. So if you're Marvel and DC and you can tap into that, you're it's going to make you some money. So if you make a whole, if you make a bunch of theme covers, and people will buy books that they wouldn't normally buy because they want that theme cover because of our instinct for gathering and our instinct for being surrounded by abundance.
I can't believe this. All right, I don't know why this shot adrenaline through me when you said that. When you went from hunting, saying it was gathering, it was like I had this adrenaline go through me, and I'm like, bite your lip, let him finish.
That's because people really want it to be hunting.
Well, hold on. Have you been hunting before?
Minorly, not majorly.
Okay.
To me, I know lots of people who do. I'm just saying, if you want to indulge in hunting, you can.
Okay. I'm going to counter the hunter gathering part of it, just to like have a counterpoint here. Okay. Okay. I think gathering is when you go to the comic book shop where it's readily available. I think that's gathering. Hunting is when you go out in the wild and it's like ambushing turkeys. They're not going to fight back. There's no danger, but you've got to look and find where they are. And then you've got other hunters you're competing with. So there's only so much you can get food wise because you're competing with other people wanting the same thing.
You're talking about the act, being out at the comic shop. I'm not talking about the end result is gathering.
Okay.
The end result is you're at home with your abundance. When you're a hunter, you're not into abundance. You're into getting whatever animal you got, bringing it home and eating. That you don't surround yourself with abundance, because you can't surround yourself with a whole bunch of dead deer.
Yeah, you can. It's taxidermy.
Right.
Yeah, it's trophy hunting, and taxidermy.
Yeah,
and go ahead, Daryl. Daryl's on it. Go, Daryl.
Then you're gathering stuff.
Here's one of my trophies.
Yourself with abundance.
Look on your wall behind you. You have your treasures that you
Yeah, I
put
got
down
back
behind
here,
you
yeah.
or made or created. Yeah.
Like I said, that's
another one.
surrounding yourself with abundance. That's different than all the hunters I know go out into out into the woods and they come back and they either get something or they don't. And when they get something, they process it and eat it and whatever. That's a completely different thing than collecting anything.
I might change this episode to this.
Hunting the unicorn. But I think that's what Marvel and DC tap into with all their different covers, that instinct for gathering. Mm-hmm. And even when you hear people, like there's lots of people on YouTube who only buy things from dollar bins. And they always say, "Oh, I'm at the hunt for this and that," but they're not on it. When you're going through a dollar bin, you're not hunting. You're gathering. That's the easiest thing in the world. And if you want to tell me you're hunting for a Hulk 181, maybe I'll believe you.
See,
but
to
when
me,
you're going to the dollar bins,
to me, I consider it gathering because, like, you know, when the nuts and berries are going to bloom in the spring, you know, at a comic book shop when those books are going to be there. You could even get a pull list where you just go in and gather it up. But if you go on a hunt, you don't know what you're going to find to eat. You may be looking for the unicorn, that specific animal or something that you may never find, but you find
but
things.
when you go on a hunt, you know what season the deer are here and deer are there. You know all the same stuff that you know with gathering. It's just more dangerous. There's no dangerous with hunting comic books. No one has ever gotten accidentally killed on a comic book. Just like no one gets killed gathering. There's no danger. No one gets killed comic book hunting.
Wait a minute,
I know we like to call it hunting.
Are you kidding? I had a guy reach across me to get in a box. He about died. But go ahead, Daryl. Go ahead, Daryl.
I just said I got a vicious paper cut one time.
What was that? What was that?
I said I got a vicious paper cut one time. It was awful. It almost got infected.
I'm just saying, every single person I bet Tim meets in a comic book shop, he thinks he can take. And he probably wouldn't be that wrong.
It's not that I think it.
I'm just saying there's no danger.
When they see a short, hairy man this confident, they wonder. You know?
I don't have to bring my black belt with me next time. It's not good anymore, but I still have it.
Yeah, just because we all collect comic books doesn't mean we can't start any shit. You know what I mean? Like,
you know where fist fights never happen? Comic book shops.
And also, if you're at a show, you have probably all been beside that guy that really stinks and burn your nose.
Jared only thinks it's hunting if you might die. Jared, this is one of the
there's
few
danger
times
to hunting that there isn't to gathering.
This is one of the
things that defines it.
I think this is one of the few times I do feel confident saying you may be in the minority of this, and it deserves more talk later. It deserves another conversation.
Like I said, but I think that's because people are really invested in the idea of hunting comics. It makes them feel manly. If you tell them they're gathering, they get all defensive. Even though, like I said, it's the being surrounded by abundance.
Have you ever tried to shoot a squirrel with a bow and arrow?
I've never tried to shoot a squirrel with a bow and arrow.
We need to take you out and let you feel some real hunting, and then I think you might have more to draw from.
And then you're going to try to convince me that's just like looking for a Hulk 181 on eBay? I don't think so.
No, more like Hulk 180. Hulk 180, not 181. Hulk at 180. Yeah.
Yeah, the first appearance.
the real first appearance 180. Anybody can get on eBay and find that 181, but only a comic book guy knows he showed up on that last panel on 180.
And he
if you want to go down there, we know he showed up in Foom.
Well, Daryl, what'd you think? You came on an eventful night. I really do got to wrap it up. I got people waiting on me to go get ice cream.
Well, I had fun. The biggest thing that I got out of this whole thing is I got a nice list of books to start reading. I want to apologize because so much of the time I'm like, when y'all start talking about the head shops and stuff, I was like, I have never even heard of such things. so I've learned about some cool stuff, and that's what it's about, learning and growing from it.
And I barely mentioned European comics.
You want to get real obscure for a moment before we leave? On Facebook today, I was trying to hunt down the origins of a lettering pen style, because when I was there, there's this right here. I think I have one. Yeah, this is a Hunt 107 lettering pen. This is a Hunt 107 pen tip in a pen. You dip this in ink and you draw with it. Mm-hmm. When I was at Marvel in the 90s, there was a special thing you did with this, where you took the, like I said, this is a pointed tip, the kind of the straight across on top, where you would clip it at an angle. You would scrape it on wet, dry sandpaper to smooth out the angle, and then you'd scrape it on glass too to get a really, because you just changed the tip. And then what you would do is you dip it, instead of using it as a number tip, you turn it sideways and you'd letter with it. And that's how you get your thicks and thins in lettering. And I was trying to figure out when this particular technique was developed. Because if you look at all old comics, they're not done like that. Like a lot of people, like this was the method of lettering that was taught in the bullpen in the 80s and 90s. And I had heard one person invented it, but I was like, maybe. So I had like a whole bunch of old letterers on, Rick Parker, Dave Sharp, John Babcock, Todd Klein showed up, like all discussing, because nobody knew. We were trying to figure out where that came from. And the earliest person we could Rick Parker learned it from Mori Karamoto. I don't know if you guys know that name, but he was a letterer for Marvel in the 60s and 70s. And in the late 60s, Mori was on staff. He was a bullpenner in the late 60s and early 70s who did all their cover copy. And we think that's as far as we could trace it back. Is we think he invented the filed 107 lettering pen. So I was like, I was like, that's the most obscure thing I was investigating this week on Facebook, was trying to figure, because it just came. It started with Pat Rousseau. If you go to Pat Rousseau's Twitter, he was demonstrating making one of them. He was an 80s bullpenner, and he's still a letterer. And so I was asking him if he knew who, and he's like, he learned from Jim Novak. And I said, I eventually traced it back to Rick Parker, and Jim Novak learned from Mori Kuramoto. And that's just, so, and it was like, I was looking for an actual comic that Mori Kuramoto lettered, because mostly if you look up Mori Kuramoto's, his credits on the Grand Comic Book Database, it's mostly he lettered one page, because he did the cover copy, because he was the in-house cover copy guy from like 67, 74 or something like that. So I finally found like a page online of Millie the model that he lettered, and I'm like, I think that's a Hunt 107.
So Jared, I know this has got you juiced up, but I gotta go, man.
Yep.
The ice cream is melting that you haven't gotten yet.
I just wanted to give Daryl a little taste of how obscure we can get around here.
I love stories like that. That to me is fascinating.
Yeah. I love the history of comics, and that's something, like I said, nobody knows a Hunt 107 filed, and nobody knows who started it. So it's kind of like somebody should know that. That's
awesome. Well, it sounds like we may pick up on some of these topics next week. It sounds like, because I'm not. You got your hunt for what you were talking about there, and I'm like, I'm gonna explain the whole skill set of hunting versus gathering. So
I would say this: I have very little luck hunting comic books or hunting animals. So there you go.
I could have been gathering the information too.
Strangely enough, after I got out of the military, I stopped hunting. I don't get it, But anyway, thanks for my.
I'd be like Wolverine and try to touch the deer.
Yeah, And tune in next week to see if we get Scott back or not. That's something. There's a
drama
cliffhanger for you.
continues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Later, guys.
Have a good
Wait,
one.
watch out for the ice cream man. And we're out.
Yeah.